The library of Hollowspire Keep had not welcomed a stranger in 12 winters, and Briseda Kaur was trying very hard to pretend she was not afraid of it. She stood in the servants' corridor with a bucket in one hand and a bundle of polishing cloths tucked under her arm, waiting for the head steward to finish writing her name into the household ledger. The corridor smelled of cold stone and candle smoke, and something older beneath it. Something her grandmother would have called the smell of memory. Briseda had never believed in such things. She had believed in bread and rent and the small, careful life she had stitched together in the lower town, and when the posting had appeared on the notice board offering 3 silver pieces a week for a woman willing to clean a room no one else would enter, she had only thought of the silver. Now, standing in a corridor that seemed to breathe, she was thinking of other things. "Kaur," the steward said, not looking up from his ledger. "Daughter of no recorded house, orphaned at the founding hospice of Low Brennar, employed 3 years at the candlemaker's, 2 years at the weaver's, 1 year at the Thistle Inn. Is this correct?" "Yes, sir." "You are here because Mistress Ulven refused the post." "So I was told." Mistress Ulven refused because the last girl who cleaned the king's study left in the middle of the night and was never seen again. He finally looked up, and his eyes were the color of weak tea. "I tell you this so you understand what you are accepting." Briseda's throat tightened, but she did not let her face move. She had learned very young that the world ate women who showed what they felt, and she had decided, a long time ago, that she would not be eaten. "I understand, sir. You will clean only the outer chamber. You will not touch the desk. You will not touch the shelves above the hearth. You will not open the cabinet behind the black curtain. You will not open any book, not even to dust it. You will sweep. You will polish. You will leave. 3 silver a week, paid on the 7th day. Do you accept?" "I accept." He closed the ledger as if closing a door. "Then follow me, Mistress Kaur. The king is at the western border and will not return for 11 days. You have that long to prove you can be trusted in his private rooms." The climb to the study was longer than Briseda expected. The steward led her up a winding stair inside the north tower, past landings lit by blue glass lanterns, past tapestries whose threads had been so carefully preserved they still showed the red of old blood and the green of old forests. On the 4th landing she passed a mirror set into the wall, and for the space of a single breath she did not recognize the woman in its glass. The woman in the glass had her face, her dark hair pinned into a plain knot, her gray servant's dress. But the woman in the glass was looking at her as if she had been waiting, as if she knew her. Briseda blinked, and the moment passed. The woman in the mirror was only herself again, startled and tired. "Keep walking, Mistress Kaur." She kept walking. The study was at the top of the tower, behind a door of black wood bound in iron. The steward did not open it. He set a brass key in her palm with the solemnity of a man handing over a weapon. One more thing," he said. "Whatever you think you hear in that room, you did not hear it. Whatever you think you see, you did not see it. The king does not tolerate gossip, and I do not tolerate servants who cannot keep their own minds. Do you understand?" "I understand, sir." "Then I wish you a long life, Mistress Kaur. Longer than the last girl's, at any rate." He left her alone in front of the door. Briseda stood for a long moment with the key in her hand. The corridor behind her was empty. The only sound was the slow settling of old wood somewhere above her head. She thought of the 3 silver pieces. She thought of her rent. She thought of the small, bright window of the room she shared above the tanner's yard, and the plant her mother had given her the year before she died. The only thing she had left of her mother, and she thought, very clearly, that she was not the kind of woman who ran from doors. She turned the key. The lock opened without resistance, as if it had been waiting. The study was not what she had expected. She had expected grandeur, the kind of room a king would keep for his private thoughts. Gilt and velvet and trophies. Instead, she stepped into a long, narrow chamber lined floor to ceiling with books. So many books that the walls themselves seemed to lean inward under their weight. There was a hearth with a fire laid, but not lit. There was a single desk of dark polished wood, and a single chair behind it, and a single lamp burning very low. The air was warm, though she could not tell from where the warmth came. The air smelled of old paper and pine resin and, faintly, something she could not name. Something like rain falling on a field she had never walked in. She set her bucket down. She took a careful breath. "Well," she said to the empty room, because she had always spoken to empty rooms when she was afraid. "It is only dust." The room did not answer, but she had the distinct impression that it had heard her. She worked through the morning. She polished the floor along the edges where the steward had told her to polish. She wiped the window glass. She refilled the lamp oil from the small flask she had been given. She did not touch the desk. She did not touch the shelves above the hearth. She did not look at the cabinet behind the black curtain, though she could feel it the whole time, the way a person feels someone watching them from across a street. At midday, she stopped to eat the bread she had brought in her apron pocket. She sat on the small wooden stool by the door, because sitting in any of the room's real chairs would have felt like trespassing, and she chewed slowly and looked at the books. The books were arranged by color: red leather, then brown, then green, then black. Some spines bore titles she did not recognize. Some bore no titles at all. One shelf, she noticed, held nothing but identical volumes, all bound in the same dark blue cloth. She counted them without meaning to. 42. 42 identical blue books on a single shelf, and not a single word on any of their spines. She told herself she did not care what was in them. She finished her bread. She returned to her cloth and her polish. She worked for another hour in silence. And then the cabinet opened. It did not creak. It did not groan. The black curtain simply stirred, as if a breeze had passed through a room with no windows open, and when the curtain settled again, the cabinet behind it stood ajar. Briseida froze with her cloth against the floor. She knew, with the part of her mind that had kept her alive through 3 hungry winters, that she should close the cabinet and say nothing and leave. She knew the steward had warned her. She knew the last girl had vanished. She knew, she knew, she knew. She stood up anyway, because on the middle shelf of the cabinet, in the soft blue light that came from nowhere, sat a single book. It was bound in the same dark blue cloth as the 42 on the shelf. But this one had a title. The title was pressed into the cloth in silver thread, and it was not in any language she had ever seen, and yet, as she stepped closer, the letters moved. They rearranged themselves on the cover as she watched. They became letters she knew. They became a word she knew. They became a name she knew. They became her name. Briseida Kaur. Her hand moved before her mind caught up. She lifted the book from the shelf. It was warm. Warmer than a book should be. Warmer than her own skin. She carried it to the desk she had been forbidden to touch, and she set it down on the desk she had been forbidden to touch, and she opened it. The first page bore a date. The date was 31 years ago, 1 year before she had been born. The entry beneath the date was written in a strong, slanting hand, in ink that was still somehow wet at the edges, and it read, "I dreamed of her again last night. I do not know her name yet, but I know her face." She was standing in a field of white flowers, and she turned to me and she said, "You are late." I woke weeping. The council grows suspicious. I must stop writing these down. Briseida's hands began to shake. She turned the page. Another date. Another entry. "I saw her today in a crowd at the harvest market. She was a child. She did not see me. I could not approach. The others would have noticed. She turned the page again and again and again. Every page was a dated entry. Every entry spoke of a woman he was searching for, a woman whose face he knew before he knew her name, a woman he had loved in dreams since he was a boy. The entries went forward in time. They went through her childhood. They described the orphanage in Lobrenar. They described the candlemaker's shop. They described the Thistle Inn. They described her. And then, near the end of the book, she found the entry that made her stop breathing. The date was today. Today's date, written in the same slanting hand, the ink still wet enough to smear when her finger brushed it. She comes to my study at midday. She will find this book. She will read these words. I have waited 31 years for her to read these words. I am sorry, Brisetta. I am so sorry for what has been done to you. Do not trust the one who sent you here. A floorboard creaked behind her. She had not heard the door open. She turned, slowly, the book still in her hands, and a man was standing in the doorway of the study. He was very tall. His hair was black and streaked at the temples with the first thread of silver. His eyes were the color of storm water, and they were fixed on her, and they were wet. You found it, he said, and his voice broke on the word. You actually found it? Brisetta's mouth opened. No sound came out. Behind him, at the far end of the corridor, she heard the fast, hard sound of boots on stone. Many boots, running boots, and beneath the running a woman's voice she half recognized, calling the king's name, calling it with the sharp, bright urgency of someone who had just realized they were too late. The king did not turn toward the sound. He only looked at Brisetta, and at the book in her hands, and he whispered, Run. She did not remember deciding to run. One moment she was standing in the study with the book burning faintly against her palms and the king's storm-water eyes fixed on hers. The next, she was in the servants' corridor, the book stuffed inside her apron against her ribs, the brass key abandoned on the floor behind her, her breath coming in sharp little tearing sounds that did not belong to her body. She heard the woman's voice again, closer now, and she heard the king say something she could not make out, and she heard a door slam. And then she was 3 flights down the tower stair, and the voices were above her, and she was still moving. She did not stop until she reached the kitchen yard, and even then she only stopped because her legs would not carry her farther. She pressed her back against the outer wall of the pantry. The cold stone bit through her dress. The book at her ribs was not cold. The book at her ribs was warm like a living thing, warm like a creature that had been waiting inside a shelf for 31 years to be held against a human heart, and she could feel it pulsing, faintly, in time with her own racing blood. She had to get out of the keep. She had no plan. She had only the 3 silver pieces she had not yet earned, the clothes on her body, and a book that should not exist, telling her to trust no one who had sent her to find it. The steward had sent her. The thought arrived in her mind with the clean clarity of a bell. The steward had sent her to that room. The steward had given her the key. The steward had told her, twice, that the last girl who cleaned the study had vanished in the night, and he had told her, as if he already knew what her own ending would be. Do not trust the one who sent you here. Brisetta pressed her hand against the book through the cloth of her apron and felt its warmth answer her. And she understood, with a certainty she could not explain, that the book was telling her the truth. She waited until the laundry cart rolled out through the servants' gate, and she walked beside it as if she belonged there, her head down, her apron pulled low over her hands. The gatekeepers did not stop her. Laundry carts were invisible. Servants were invisible. She had spent her whole life being invisible, and for the first time she was grateful for it. She walked for an hour without looking back. The road she took was not the road into the lower town. She could not go home. Whoever had sent her would know her home. She took instead the old pilgrim road that ran east along the river, the road that had been used when the keep still received pilgrims, the road that everyone had forgotten. She walked until the sun began to fall behind the hills. She walked until her feet were bleeding inside her shoes. She walked until she found a small abandoned chapel at the bend of the river, a chapel with no roof and a door that had long since rotted off its hinges. And she went inside because she could not walk any farther. She sat down against the wall. She took the book out of her apron. In the dusk light, the silver thread on its cover still spelled her name. She opened it. She had to know. She had to know what else was in it. She had to know why a man she had never met had been writing about her for 31 years, why a room she had never entered had felt like it remembered her, why a mirror she had never looked into had looked back at her as if it knew her. She turned to a page at random. The entry was dated 19 years ago, the year she had turned 12. She is at the founding hospice in Lobrennar. I have sent the woman with the silver ring to watch over her. The woman with the silver ring will not tell me what she sees. She says only that the child is well and that I must not come. She says the child has been hidden for a reason I am not yet allowed to know. I am the king of a country of wolves and stars, and I am forbidden to approach a single girl in a single orphanage, and I obey, because I love the woman with the silver ring like my own blood, and because she has never once in my life lied to me about anything that mattered. I will obey her for 1 more year. Brisetta's hand flew to her own throat. She wore a silver ring on a chain around her neck. She had worn it since she was old enough to remember wearing anything. It had been given to her by the woman who had raised her in the founding hospice, the woman the other children had called Mother Velk, the woman who had died when Brisetta was 17, the woman who had whispered to her the night before she died, "One day you will need to forgive me, child, for the thing I did to keep you safe." Brisetta had never understood what she meant. She pulled the chain out of her collar now, with fingers that did not feel like her own, and she held the ring up in the last of the dusk light, and the ring was silver, and the ring was plain, and the ring was exactly the same silver as the thread on the book's cover. Something broke open inside her chest. Not grief. Not yet. Something worse. Something that felt like a door being found in a wall she had lived against her whole life. "Mother," she whispered to the dead woman who was not her mother. "Mother, what did you do?" The book did not answer, but when she turned the page again, the next entry was not from 19 years ago. The next entry was from today. And the ink, like the ink in the study, was still wet. She is reading this now. She has found the ring. She is beginning to remember. "Brisetta, if you can hear me through these pages, I need you to listen. The woman you called mother was your mother's own sister. She was one of the last true keepers. She hid you because my enemies learned the shape of the prophecy. They would have killed you in your cradle. She took you from your own mother's arms in a snowstorm and raised you as her own child, so that no hunter would find the one they were searching for. She died before she could bring you home. I have searched for you every day since. I am not your enemy. The one who sent you to my study is. The one who sent you to my study killed the last girl who found this book. The one who sent you to my study is in this keep tonight, and she is looking for you. And if she finds you before I do, she will put your body in the river before the sun rises." Brisetta closed the book with shaking hands. The dusk had become night while she was reading. The chapel around her was almost fully dark. Somewhere in the black beyond the rotted doorway, a nightbird called once, and then fell silent. Something was moving in the trees. She pressed herself flat against the chapel wall. She held the book against her chest. She did not breathe. The thing in the trees was a man. She could see the outline of him now, framed against the last gray band of sky, tall and broad and walking with the slow patience of a hunter who had already found what he was hunting. He was not the king. She knew that in her bones. This man was shorter, heavier, and he was alone, and he was carrying something long and thin in his right hand. "Mistress Kaur," the man called softly. "I mean you no harm. The steward sent me. He is worried about you. He only wants the book returned. Come out, child. Come out, and everything will be made right. Brisetta did not move. The man took another step toward the chapel. And then, from the road behind him, a second voice spoke, low and steady and very close. Step away from the door, friend. I will only ask once. The man with the thin weapon froze. Brisetta turned her face slightly to see through the gap in the wall, and she saw, standing on the old pilgrim road in the last blue light of the evening, a woman she did not know. The woman was tall. The woman wore a traveling cloak over what looked like a soldier's coat. The woman had silver in her dark hair and a long silver ring on the smallest finger of her left hand, and her eyes, when they caught the last light, were green as winter moss. "Who are you?" the man with the weapon said. "I am the keeper who should have gone to the founding hospice 31 years ago, instead of my sister." The woman answered, "Step away from the door or I will put you in the river myself." The man with the weapon laughed. It was an ugly laugh, short and dry. "The king does not know you are here," he said. "The king is still in his study, weeping over a book. By the time he realizes his little cleaning girl has fled with his life secret, she will already be floating." "Ah," said the woman in the road. "So she did send you?" "Yes." "Then I was right to come." The woman moved faster than Brisetta could follow. There was the sound of steel meeting steel. Once, and then a second time, and then a soft, heavy sound like a sack of grain falling from a cart, and then silence. Brisetta stayed pressed against the wall of the chapel, the book against her ribs, her breath held so tightly her chest hurt. "Child," the woman called gently, "you can come out now." Brisetta did not move. "My name is Vera Kaur," the woman said. "I was your mother's sister. The woman you called Mother Velk was my sister too, and so your aunt as well. My sister was the keeper who raised you. I am the keeper who was meant to bring you home. I failed for 31 years, and I will not fail tonight. Come out, Brisetta. Please. We have very little time." Brisetta stepped slowly into the doorway of the chapel. The woman on the road lowered the blade in her hand. Her eyes, even in the dimness, were kind. "Oh, child," she breathed. "You look so much like her." "Like who?" Brisetta whispered. "Like your mother." Brisetta's knees almost gave. She caught herself against the doorframe. "The steward," she managed. "The one who sent me. Who is she? The book said she. Who is she?" Vera Kaur's face went still. "She is the regent of Hollowspire," Vera said quietly. "She is the woman who has sat at the king's right hand since he was a boy. She is the one who raised him after his parents were killed. She is the one he loves like a mother. And she is the one who has been hiding you from him for your entire life. Because if you ever took your rightful place beside him, she would lose everything she has spent her life building." Brisetta opened her mouth. She did not have time to speak. Because the trees on the far side of the pilgrim road had begun to move, and out of them, one by one, stepped 7 figures in long gray cloaks, and each of them carried a curved blade, and each of them had eyes that caught the starlight wrong, and the one at the center of them, the tallest one, pushed back the hood of her cloak to reveal a face Brisetta had seen every day of the last 11 days. The steward. Except the steward was not a man at all. The steward was a woman with tea-colored eyes and a mouth curving into a thin, unhappy smile, and she said, in a voice Brisetta knew and did not know, "Hello, little mouse. Mother has come to take you home." Vera Kaur stepped between Brisetta and the road. She did it without hurry. She did it the way a woman steps between her child and a cook fire, with a calm that did not belong to the moment. And Brisetta understood, in the half-second it took her aunt to move, that Vera Kaur had been rehearsing this step for 31 years. "Halveth," Vera said quietly, and it took Brisetta a breath to realize her aunt was speaking to the tall figure at the center of the 7 cloaks. You will not have her. The tall figure answered in the steward's voice, in the voice Brisetta had heard at the household ledger only that morning, in a voice that no longer belonged to any man at all. You were told to stay in the south, keeper. You were told never to return to this keep. You disobeyed the council. The council is compromised? You know it is. The council serves the regent. The regent serves the realm. The girl is the end of the realm, Vera. She has always been the end of the realm. You know the prophecy as well as I do. I know the prophecy our grandmother wrote. I also know the prophecy our grandmother was forced to write, and they are not the same. Vera's voice did not rise. It only deepened, the way a river deepens when the wind drops. Step back, Halveth. Take your hunters with you. I will not ask a third time. The tall figure called Halveth laughed, and in the laugh Brisetta heard the steward, and in the laugh she heard something that was not the steward. Something older and colder, and her hand tightened on the book at her ribs until her knuckles went white. 6 against 1, keeper. Even you cannot count that wrong. I am not counting, Vera said. I am warning. Then she moved. Brisetta had never seen a person move the way her aunt moved. It was not speed the way a running horse was fast, or a falling stone was fast. It was something else, a folding of distance, as if the road between her aunt and the 7 cloaked figures had agreed for one breath to be shorter than it was. Vera was at the center of them before the nearest hunter had raised a blade, and then there was the bright, sharp music of steel, and then a cloaked figure was on the ground, and then another. And then Vera was spinning back toward the chapel with blood on her sleeve and her silver rings shining and her eyes bright with a fury Brisetta had not known a face could hold. Inside, her aunt barked, against the far wall, do not drop the book. Brisetta obeyed. She stumbled back into the broken chapel, her feet slipping on the fallen stones, and she pressed herself against the far wall where the old altar had once stood, and she clutched the book to her chest. Outside, the sound of fighting was the sound of a storm made of metal. She heard her aunt's voice, short and hard, giving commands to no one. She heard the grunt of a man being struck. She heard the wet sound that followed. She heard, very clearly, the moment her aunt was cut. It was not a large sound. It was only a sharp indrawn breath. But Brisetta had lived long enough in the lower town to know the difference between a person who had been grazed and a person who had been opened, and the sound her aunt made was the second kind. Brisetta pressed her forehead against the cold wall of the chapel and she whispered, to no one, to the book, to her dead mother, to the king she had met for the length of a single sentence. Please, please, someone, help her. The book at her chest grew warm. Not the quiet warm of before. A rising warm, a kindling warm, like a hearthstone that had been cold for decades and was finally remembering its fire. She felt it through her dress. She felt it through her ribs. She felt it under her skin, and then inside her skin, and then inside her bones. And she made a small, startled sound, because it did not hurt. But it was not nothing, and she had spent her entire life being nothing. The book fell open in her hands. She had not opened it. And the pages turned on their own. Fast. Faster. A wind passing through them, though there was no wind in the chapel, and they stopped on a page, near the end. A page that was empty. A page that had been empty until, as she watched, ink began to write itself across the paper in the slanting hand she had seen that morning in the king's study. Daughter of the keeper, the ink wrote. If you are reading this page, you are in danger you cannot answer. The record will answer for you. Speak the name I gave you in the first dream. Speak it aloud. Speak it now. Briseda's mouth went dry. I do not know the name, she whispered to the page. I do not know what you are talking about. I do not know any name. The ink kept writing. You do. You have always known. It is the name your mother spoke over your cradle before she gave you to my keeping. It is the name I spoke into the dark every night of my childhood. It is the name the wolves of Hollow Spire will answer to. Close your eyes, Brissida. Close your eyes and let the ring on your throat speak. She closed her eyes. The ring against her skin was very warm now. Warm the way the book was warm. Warm the way, she realized with a shock that was almost a laugh. Her own blood was warm. As if they were the same thing. As if they had always been the same thing. And in the dark behind her eyelids, a memory she had never had before rose up to meet her like a hand reaching out of deep water. A woman's voice, younger than Mother Velk's, softer, closer. A woman's voice saying a name the way a prayer is said. My Sable, my little Sable, my brave girl. Briseda's eyes opened. Sable, she said aloud in the empty chapel, with the book open in her hands. The book flared. Light came out of it. Not candlelight, not lamplight. A pale, high, silvered light, the color of the moon on snow, and it rose up around her like water filling a cup, and she gasped. Not because it hurt, but because it did not. Because for the first time in her entire life, she could feel the shape of her own self, and the shape was larger than she had believed. Her hands were not shaking anymore. Her ribs did not ache. The raw place in her feet where her shoes had worn through during the long walk was closing, the skin knitting itself. And she could feel it knitting, and she could feel her hair lifting away from her scalp, and she could feel the stone wall behind her humming faintly, as if the keep itself had just noticed she existed. Outside the chapel, the fighting had gone quiet. Brissida stepped through the doorway with the book open in her hands and the silvered light rising off her skin. Her aunt was on one knee in the road, one hand pressed to her side, her blade buried point down in the packed earth beside her. 3 of the hunters were on the ground and did not seem likely to stand again. 4 were still on their feet. The tall one, Halveth, the one who had been the steward, stood at the center of the 4 with her curved blade dripping slow into the dust. Halveth's tea-colored eyes moved from Vera to Brissida, and for the first time that night, something moved across her face that Brissida understood as fear. Impossible, Halveth said softly. You never triggered the record. You never triggered the record. My lady said it could not be triggered without the king. Your lady lied, Brissida answered, and her voice did not sound like her own voice, and she did not care. Step away from my aunt. Little mouse, put that book down. Step away from my aunt. Halveth raised her blade. Brissida did not move. She did not know how to fight. She had never in her life held a weapon. But the book in her hands was humming now, a low, steady hum that was climbing higher by the breath, and she understood, without being told, that the record did not need her to know how to fight. The record had been waiting 31 years to answer a question, and the question had just been asked, and the question was, what happens to the woman who tries to kill a keeper's daughter on the pilgrim road at dusk? The book answered. The silver light that had been rising off Briseda's skin flowed down her arms and into the pages, and out of the pages it poured in a wide, slow wave, and the wave rolled across the road like a tide, and it did not touch her aunt, and it did not touch her. And when it touched the 4 cloaked figures, they were no longer 4 cloaked figures. They were 4 shapes on their knees in the dirt, clutching at their ears, their curved blades fallen from their hands, and above them the tall one, Halveth, was still standing, but barely, her jaw clenched against a sound she could not name and could not bear. What are you? Halveth gasped. I do not know yet, Brissida said honestly, but you are going to tell me what you did to my mother, or I am going to let this book decide what happens to you. Halveth laughed, and the laugh was wet, and the laugh had blood in it. Your mother, she said. Oh, little mouse. Your mother begged my lady for her life. Your mother begged on her knees in the snow for the life of a child the prophecy said would unmake a kingdom. My lady was merciful. My lady let her live long enough to give you to the keeper. My lady is always merciful. You will see, when she meets you, how merciful she can be. Who is she? You know who she is. Say her name. Halveth smiled with bloody teeth, and she said a name. And the name was a name Brisetta had heard every week of her childhood at the founding hospice, spoken with reverence, spoken with gratitude, spoken as the name of the great lady who paid for their bread and their blankets, and the teacher who came on seventh days to teach the orphans their letters, the name of the holy regent who loved all the abandoned children of the realm as if they were her own, the name of the woman who had, according to the hospice sisters, personally chosen the silver ring that Brisetta wore around her throat. The name hit Brisetta like a blow. She staggered. The silver light around her flickered, the book in her hands dimmed by a single shade. And in the half-breath that her aunt was distracted by watching Brisetta stagger, Halveth moved. She did not move toward Brisetta. She moved toward Vera. Brisetta saw it happen in pieces, the curved blade snatched up from the dirt. Her aunt still on one knee, looking up too late. The blade rising, her aunt's hand going for her own sword and not reaching it in time, the blade coming down. No! Brisetta screamed. The book screamed with her. The silver light did not roll this time. It burst. A single hard pulse. A shock of sound and brightness that knocked Halveth off her feet and threw her 10 paces down the road. And when Halveth struck the ground, she did not move again. But her blade had already fallen. Vera Kor was on her back in the dirt, her hand pressed to her throat, and the blood coming through her fingers was very dark in the starlight, and Brisetta dropped the book and ran to her, and fell to her knees in the road and put her own hands over her aunt's hands, and her aunt looked up at her with eyes the color of winter moss and whispered, "Sable, Sable, look at me. Listen. No, 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 please, no. Listen, the king is coming. I sent word before I left the keep. He is coming down the pilgrim road with everything he has. You must stay alive until he reaches you. Do you understand me? You must stay alive. Do not talk like that. Vera, aunt, do not talk like that. Sable, look at the ring. Look at the ring on your throat." Brisetta looked. The silver ring was glowing. It was glowing the same color as the book had glowed. It was glowing the way, she understood with a sick, slow horror, her aunt's ring had glowed before Halveth's blade. "It is a beacon," Vera whispered. "It has always been a beacon. For him. Only for him." The regent did not know. The regent never knew. "She gave you a ring she could not read because my sister enchanted it before she gave it to you, and the regent thought it was only silver. And oh child, your mother was so clever. Your mother was so clever. Stay alive, stay alive, stay until him." Her aunt's hand went slack. Brisetta sat in the cold road with her aunt's head in her lap, and her aunt's blood on her dress, and the ring at her throat burning like a small white star. And she did not cry, because crying required a self she did not currently possess. And instead, she looked up at the empty stretch of road ahead of her, the road that led back to Hollow Spire Keep, and she listened. She heard it before she saw it. Hooves, a great many hooves, running. And beneath the hooves, something else. Something that was not a horse. Something larger. Something that shook the ground the way only one kind of thing shook the ground in the old songs her aunt had just taught her how to remember. A wolf was running down the pilgrim road. A wolf the size of a cart horse, black as the space between stars, its breath steaming white in the night air, its eyes the color of storm water. And it was coming for her, and it was not slowing down. The wolf reached her in the space between two heartbeats. Brisetta did not move. She could not have moved if the road had opened beneath her. She sat in the dirt with her aunt's weight against her thigh and her aunt's blood drying on her hands and the silver ring at her throat burning like a small sun, and the enormous black creature crossed the last 20 paces of road in a single bound and skidded to a halt in front of her, so close that the steam of its breath washed over her face, so close that she could see herself reflected in the wet dark of its eye. It was not looking at her, as a hunter looks at prey. It was looking at her the way a man looks at a door he has been pounding on for 31 years, the moment before it finally opens. Then, slowly, very slowly, the wolf lowered its enormous head and pressed its nose against the ring at her throat. The ring flared once, as if greeting it, and went out. The wolf sank to its belly in the road. Its great sides heaved, and between one breath and the next, the shape of it unmade itself, fur giving way to skin, paws to hands. And the man she had met for the length of a single sentence in the doorway of his own study was on his knees in the dirt in front of her, bare-chested and shaking, his hand outstretched but not quite touching her, as if he did not yet have permission. "Sable," he whispered. The word hit her harder than the blade had hit her aunt. "That is not my name," she said, and her voice was a stranger's voice. "My name is Brisetta Kaur." "Yes. Yes, it is. And also the other. Both are yours. They were always both yours." She looked down at her aunt. The mossy eyes were open and empty. The throat beneath her hands had stopped moving. Somewhere behind her, in the broken chapel, the record lay open on the altar stone, and she could feel it the way a person feels the ocean from a cliff top, a vast and patient thing that had finished what it came to do and was waiting now for her to decide what came next. "She is dead," Brisetta said. The king's face crumpled. He did not try to hide it. He bent forward until his forehead almost touched the road, and he made a sound in his chest that Brisetta had never heard a grown man make, a low torn sound that did not have a word in it, and she understood, with a clarity that cut her, that he had loved her aunt. He had loved the woman dying in her lap. He had loved her for years and years, and the woman had failed him for 31 of those years, and he had never stopped loving her for it. "Vera," he said when he could speak again. "Oh, Vera, I told you to send for me. I told you never to ride the South Road alone." "She did send for you," Brisetta said. "She said she did." "She did." He lifted his head. His stormwater eyes were wet and steady. "She sent the falcon an hour after you left the keep. I was already riding. I felt the record wake from the western border. I felt it through my own skin. I was already coming, Brisetta. I would have come even without her falcon. I would have come if I had to crawl." Hooves again, behind him. A company of riders drawing up along the pilgrim road, their horses blowing hard in the cold. Brisetta did not look at them. She could not look anywhere but at the man in front of her, the man whose name she did not know yet, the man who had written her name into a book for 3 decades. "What is your name?" she asked him, and she heard how small her own voice had become. He blinked, as if the question had surprised him. As if, after everything, it had not occurred to him that she did not know. "Roderick," he said. "Roderick of Hollowspire, king of the reach of Morrowfell, son of Aldemar and Cealine, ward of the Lady Regent Esau, and the fool who waited for you." "Roderick." She said the name, and it felt impossible in her mouth. "Roderick, I have no idea who I am. I know. I do not know what the record is. I do not know what a keeper is. I do not know why my mother begged on her knees in the snow. I do not know why the woman who raised me called me her little Sable, and then gave me a different name, and let me grow up thinking I was no one. I do not know why you have been writing about me since before I was born, And I do not know why you are kneeling in the dirt of a pilgrim road in front of a cleaning girl, and I do not know why when you say the word sable, something inside me that has been asleep my whole life wakes up. I know, Briseda. I know. Then tell me. He looked down at her aunt. His jaw worked. Then he looked up, and he held out both his hands to her, palm up, not demanding, only offering. Let me take her home first, he said quietly. Let me take Vera home, and I will tell you everything before morning. I swear it on her body. I swear it on the record. I swear it on the last 31 years of my life. Everything, Brisetta. Every piece of it. No more hiding. She was not ready to put her hands in his. She knew that. He seemed to know it too. He only waited, his palms open, the cold of the road and the warmth of the still close wolf he had been rising between them in the air. Brisetta looked down at her aunt's face, the face that, she saw now, had her own cheekbones, her own mouth, the face of a woman she had known for an hour and lost for a lifetime. Take her home, she whispered. Roderick lifted her aunt in his own arms. He did not call for any of his men. He did not let any of them touch her. He carried Vera Kaur off the road and laid her in a covered cart one of the riders had brought up, and he spread his own cloak over her, and he closed her eyes with his fingers, and he stood for a long moment beside the cart with his head bowed and his hand resting on her brow. When he came back, he did not reach for Brisetta. He held out his cloak instead, a second cloak, dark wool heavy with his scent, and he draped it around her shoulders without touching her skin, and he asked, "Can you walk, or shall I carry you?" "I can walk." He nodded and did not argue, and something in her chest uncoiled a little that she had not known had been coiled. They did not go back to the keep. He led her instead to a small hunting lodge half a mile off the Pilgrim Road, a two-room building of old timber with a deep hearth and a clean bed and a table, a lodge his riders had already secured and lit and laid a fire in. 4 of his wolves in human form took up stations at the corners of the clearing. 2 went with the cart. The rest rode east under orders she did not hear him give. He did not explain any of it. He only brought her inside and set her at the table, and poured her hot water with honey, and sat down across from her, and began at last to tell her who she was. He started at the beginning. "Your mother was the keeper of the record," he said. "The keepers are a line of women, unbroken back to the first wolves, whose only task is to guard the book you now carry. The book is not an ordinary book. It is a living artifact. It writes itself. It writes what the true king of Hollowspire dreams, and what he remembers, and what his mate is feeling, wherever she is in the world, from the moment she is born. A true king has only one mate, Briseda. Only one. For generations my line has been guessing, choosing from among the daughters of the great houses. But once in a great while, the record names her. The record is never wrong. The record named you 1 year before you were born. In the first entry. In the first entry, I was 5 years old when the keeper came to my father's court and showed him that entry. I did not understand it then, but I felt something when she read your name aloud. Something turned on inside me and did not turn off. My father was overjoyed. He promised the keeper that the moment the girl was found, she would be brought to the keep and raised as my sister until we were old enough to marry. And then, his face darkened, and then my father and mother were killed. I was 9 years old. A hunting accident, the court said. A wolf gone mad, the court said. I believed them. Everyone believed them. Everyone except the Lady Regent Isou, my father's cousin, the woman who was named my guardian the day of the funeral. Isou did not believe it. Isou wept in my arms and swore to me that she would find out who had done it. Isou raised me as her own son. Isou taught me to rule. Isou loved me, Briseda. She loved me. I was never in any doubt that she loved me. He stopped. He looked into the fire. His hand on the table between them was shaking. But she did it, Brissida said softly. She killed your father and mother. I did not know. I swear to you, I did not know. Not for years. Not until 3 months ago, when one of her old handmaidens died and left me a sealed letter with her confession in it. The handmaiden had helped Iso prepare the horses the day of the hunt. Iso had killed my father and mother to make herself regent. Iso had known the record named you. Iso had known that if the named mate were ever brought to the keep, the keepers would return to power, and the regent would be nothing. Iso had sent her own agents to hunt you before you were born. Your mother fled the keep with you in her womb, and went into the south, into Vera's care. Vera's sister, the woman you called Mother Velk, hid you at the founding hospice in Lobrenar the night you were born, and told Isal, with a steadiness I do not think I could have managed, that the child had died on the road. Isal believed her. Isal believed her for 31 years. Isal sent coin to the founding hospice every year in gratitude for the great kindness of raising the realm's abandoned children. Isal chose the silver ring herself for the infant girl who had been born the same night my named mate had died. Isal never knew, Brissida. Not until 3 weeks ago. Not until one of her own agents in Lobrenar recognized the ring. The posting, Brissida whispered. The posting at the notice board. Was her. Yes. She wanted you brought inside the keep, where she could see you. Where she could be certain. Where, if you were the one, she could arrange your accident under her own roof. She did not believe the handmaiden's letter had reached me. She did not know I had read it. She did not know that the moment I learned your name, I took the record out of the private vault and set it in my study and wrote in it every day and dared her to read it. Because I wanted her to read it. Because I wanted her to know I knew. Why did you not arrest her the day you read the letter? Because I had no proof she would not have destroyed. Because half my court are her people. Because if I moved against her before I had the record awake and the named mate standing beside me, I would have started a civil war with the wolves of the old houses on her side. I needed you, Brissida. I needed you to walk into that study and open that book. Because only a keeper's true daughter can wake the record, and the moment the record wakes, every wolf of the old blood in the reach of Morofel feels it, and every one of them knows who the true queen is. And Isal loses her army without a blade being drawn. Brissida stared at him. You used me as bait. Yes. He did not flinch. I used you as bait. I put you in a room with a book that would wake to your touch, and I waited to see if she would try to kill you in my own keep. She did. Halveth was her steward. Halveth was the one she sent to fetch the girl the last time. Halveth is the one who put the last cleaning girl in the river, because the last cleaning girl was a decoy of mine, and Esau knew it. And Halveth is the one who followed you to the pilgrim road tonight. You were never alone in that study, Brissetta. You were never alone for one breath of this entire day. Vera was watching from the south. My wolves were watching from the forest. I was riding from the western border. I would have died before I let Halveth reach you. She reached my aunt. Yes. His voice broke on the word. Yes, she did. Because I was 10 minutes too slow, and your aunt was too brave. And the record took 6 more breaths than I had planned for it to take, and I will carry that 10 minutes for the rest of my life, Brissida. I will carry it. I am not asking you to forgive it. I am telling you the shape of it, so that you know exactly who I am before you decide what to do with me. She sat in silence for a very long time. Outside, the wolves in the clearing did not make a sound. Inside, the fire cracked once and settled. You have been writing about me for 31 years, she said finally. Yes. Did you love me before you knew me? I loved the shape of you before I knew your name. I loved your name before I knew your face. I loved your face before I knew your voice. And I love your voice, Brisseda. I love it already. I have loved it since you said to an empty room this morning, well, it is only dust. She put her face in her hands. She was not crying. She was past crying. She was in the place beyond crying, where a person simply sits and lets the shape of a new life settle around them like snow. I need time, she said. You have it. I need to sleep. The bed is yours. I will stay in the other room. Roderick. She lowered her hands. He looked up at her. The firelight caught the first silver thread at his temple. When you said my name in the doorway of your study, when you said, you actually found it. Why did you say it like that? Because, he said, and his voice was very soft, I had written in the record that morning. She will not find it. I had been writing it every morning for a month. I had been writing it to protect myself, in case she did not. I had been writing it because I could not bear another day of the hope. And then you walked into my study and you walked straight to the cabinet you were forbidden to touch, and the record opened itself in your hands before I could even cross the threshold. And for the first time in 31 years of my life, I was wrong. And I have never, Briseida, been so grateful to be wrong. She looked at him for a long time. Then she stood, and she crossed the small room, and she sat down on the floor by his chair, not touching him, only close, and she leaned her head very carefully against the side of his knee. He did not move. He did not breathe. She felt him not breathe. Do not touch my hair yet, she whispered. Just let me sit here. I will not move, he said, until you tell me to. She closed her eyes. Outside, in the distance, a falcon screamed once across the black sky. The kind of scream that carried a letter. The kind of scream Briseida did not yet know how to read. Roderick did. She felt him go still under her cheek in a new way, a stillness that was not stillness but readiness. And she lifted her head, and she looked up at him, and she saw, on his face, a thing that made the small, fragile thing in her chest clench shut again. What? She said. A bird has come from the keep. What does it say? He rose very carefully so as not to push her head away. He crossed to the door. He opened it. A gray falcon dropped onto the threshold with a small brass tube at its leg, and one of his wolves was already unclasping it. And the wolf read the message, and the wolf's face went white, and the wolf handed the strip of paper to the king, and the king read it. And the king closed his eyes for one long breath, and the king said, without opening them, Iseult has sealed the keep. She has declared me dead. She has crowned herself sovereign in my absence. She has the council. She has the treasury. She has the gates. And she is hanging 30 of my household servants at dawn for treason, beginning with the girl I set to watch over Briseida at the Thistle Inn 3 years ago. A girl Briseida will not remember, but who has been watching over her every day of those 3 years. A girl named Asenka, who is 14 years old. Briseida was on her feet before she knew she had stood. Roderick. He opened his eyes. The storm in them had turned to something harder. We ride in an hour, he said. The hour was the longest of Briseida's life. Roderick moved through it like a man who had been preparing to move through it since he was 9 years old. He spoke quietly to each of his wolves in turn. He sent 2 riders east with a sealed message she did not see. He sent a 3rd north along the river road with instructions to wake every loyal holding between Hollowspire and the sea. He bathed the blood from his own hands in a basin by the hearth and dressed in clean black riding leathers that one of the wolves had brought, and he did all of it with the clean, economical grief of a man who had no time to grieve properly and would only be allowed to later when there were no more living people counting on him. He did not touch Briseida. He did not look at her more than he had to. She understood, without being told, that he did not trust himself to. She was given a traveling dress of dark wool, warmer than anything she had ever owned, and a heavier cloak lined with fur, and new boots that fit her as if they had been cut for her feet. They had been. One of the wolves, A woman with close-cropped gray hair and kind eyes confessed as much when she laced them for Briseda on the edge of the bed. "The king ordered them 3 months ago, mistress," the woman said quietly. "He knew you walked a league a day between the Thistle Inn and the Weavers. He wanted you to have shoes that did not wear through." Briseda did not know what to say to that. She said thank you. The woman nodded without looking up, and finished the laces, and left her alone. She sat on the edge of the bed in her new boots, holding the record against her chest, and for the first time since she had opened the cabinet that morning, she let herself feel the full weight of it. A girl she did not remember was going to hang at dawn for watching over her. A city she had lived beside her whole life was about to burn for her sake. A man she had met that morning loved her with a patience she did not know how to answer. A woman who had been her mother in every way that counted had lied to her every day for 17 years, and had died still lying, and had been right to do so. She did not cry. She was not ready yet. She stood up and went out into the clearing. Roderick was already mounted on a horse the size of a small hill, and he reached down without a word when she approached him, and she set her hand in his, and he lifted her up in front of him as easily as if she weighed nothing. His arm came around her waist to steady her. It was the first time he had touched her since the road. She felt it through the wool of her dress as a slow, warm line against her ribs, and she felt the record, which she had tucked inside her cloak, pulse once against her heart in answer, and she thought, a little wildly, so that is what the book has been waiting for. That answering pulse. "You will sleep against my chest if you need to," Roderick said, low, close to her ear. "I will not drop you." "I know." He touched his heel to the horse's flank. The horse turned. The wolves around them fell into formation without a sound. They rode out of the clearing as a single dark shape against the starlight, and the pilgrim road unfolded beneath them, and the night opened its mouth and swallowed them whole. He had said they would reach Hollow Spire by dawn. He had said nothing about what the ride itself would do to her. Because as the horse's hooves ate the miles, and as the cold air rushed past her face, and as Roderick's steady heartbeat thudded against her back, the memories began to come. They did not come all at once. They came the way water comes up through cracks in old stone, a little at a time, from places Briseda had not known were leaking. She saw, for a breath, a woman with dark hair braiding flowers into a child's hair in a garden she had never been in. She saw, for another breath, a fire pit ringed with white stones, and a tall man laughing, and a small wooden wolf carved from pine, pressed into her own small hand. She saw a lullaby. She did not remember the words. She remembered the tune, and the tune was in her own throat before she understood she was humming it. Roderick's arm tightened around her. "What song is that?" he asked. "I do not know." "It is the lullaby my mother sang to me. I have not heard it since I was 9 years old." Briseda stopped humming. She pressed the back of her hand against her mouth. "She would have sung it to you," Roderick said quietly after a moment. "She sang it to every child of Hollow Spire. She visited the orphanages herself, Briseda. If you were at the founding hospice before you were 2 years old, she sang it to you. She held you in her arms and sang it to you. She did not know who you were. The keeper had not told her yet. But she held you." Briseda's eyes filled. She did not let the tears fall. Not yet. "Keep riding," she whispered. He kept riding. They changed horses twice, at small holdings where wolves who wore no livery and spoke no more than necessary led the old mounts away and led new ones into the yard. At the second holding, an older woman with the bearing of a priestess came out of the door and looked at Briseda for a long moment without speaking, and then sank to one knee in the mud, and then pressed her forehead to the earth, and whispered something in a language Briseda did not know. "Rise," Roderick said quietly above her. The woman rose. Her eyes were wet. "She is the image of her mother," the woman said. "Forgive me. I had to see for myself." Who are you? Brisida asked her. I was your mother's second keeper, lady. I held you on the night you were born. I carried you from Hollow Spire to the South Road in a basket on my back. I have been waiting to see your face for 31 years. Brisida did not trust her voice. She inclined her head. The older woman bowed again and stepped back, and the fresh horse was brought forward, and they rode on. The second thing that happened on the ride was worse than the memories. They were perhaps 3 hours from the capital, crossing a low ridge that overlooked a long moonlit valley, when Brisetta saw the town below them and the word for it rose up in her throat before her mind caught up. Eldermere, she said aloud. Roderick went still behind her. You have never been to Eldermere, he said carefully. I know. Eldermere has not been called Eldermere in 27 years. It was renamed after the regent took power. It is called Isol's Ford now. The old name was struck from every map in the realm. I know. Then how? She did not answer, because she did not know. She only knew that the word Eldermere was in her mouth like a taste from a meal she had eaten in another life, and she knew, the way she had known her own name when Roderick said it, that the town below had once been hers in some way she did not yet understand. Who lived in Eldermere? She asked. Roderick was silent for a long moment. Your mother, he said at last. Your mother was born there. Her family held the town for 9 generations. Esau had them killed the year before my parents were killed. She burned their holding to the ground and renamed the town after herself, and told the realm the old keeper line had been murdered by bandits. There were no bandits, Brisetta. There never were. Brisetta looked down at the valley. The town slept in its small lights. Somewhere down there, if her mother had lived, she would have grown up. She would have run those streets barefoot. She would have known the name of every miller and every blacksmith. She would have been a girl with a home. I want it back, she said quietly. What? I want the town's name back. When this is over, when she is gone, I want Eldermere on the maps again. Roderick's arm tightened around her. She felt him press his face, just for a breath, against the crown of her head. Not a kiss. Something more careful than a kiss. You will have it, he said. You will have all of it back, Brisida. Every name she took, every house she burned, every child she hid. I swear it to you. They crested the last ridge before dawn. Hollow Spire rose out of the mist below, its black towers against a sky the color of old pearl, its walls torchlit, its gates sealed. And on the flat stretch of field before the main gate, where the common market stood on feast days, Briseda could see, even from this distance, a long line of wooden scaffolds that had not been there yesterday, 30 of them, evenly spaced, men in the livery of the regent moving among them with the slow, deliberate cruelty of people setting out chairs for a banquet. Roderick drew his horse to a halt on the ridge. His wolves drew up around him in silence. Captain, he said, to the gray-haired woman who had laced Briseda's boots the night before. Sire. What is the count at the gate? 400 of her personal guard on the walls, 2 companies in the forecourt, the old council sealed inside the throne room, the household servants, including the girl Asenka, held under guard in the south court. The gibbets are being prepared for a public hanging at first light. She has declared the execution a spectacle of state. The common people have been ordered to attend. How many of our people inside? Nearly 1,000, sire, but scattered. She has separated them by design. And outside. Every wolf of the old blood within a day's ride, sire. They have been moving through the forest since midnight. They await your horn. Roderick nodded slowly. His face, in the gray dawn light, was the face of a man who had come to the end of a long patience. I want her alive, he said. That is the only order I give about her. I want Esau alive. Whatever else happens, no wolf touches her throat. She will answer to a keeper, and the keeper will decide. Understood, sire. He turned his head. He looked down at Brissetta in front of him. That will be you, he said quietly. If you want it. You are the last keeper of the record. The decision is yours. I will not ask it of you if you cannot bear it. But the realm will ask. And it has the right to. Brissetta looked down at the city. She looked at the scaffolds. She thought of a 14-year-old girl she did not remember, sitting in a holding cell under the South Tower, waiting to be hanged at dawn for the crime of watching over her. I will bear it, she said. Then hold on to me. She gripped his wrist where it crossed her waist. He raised his free hand and set it to his lips, and he blew a long, clean note that was not a horn, that was only his own breath, and yet the sound rolled out across the valley and into the forests and into the hills. And from every direction at once, wolves began to answer him. Not men in human form. Wolves. Hundreds of them. Their voices rising in a single unbroken howl that filled the whole basin of Hollowspire from wall to wall, and on the walls the regent's guards ran to their posts, and below, at the scaffolds, the hangmen looked up from their ropes for the first time, and in the south court, Brissetta could almost feel a 14-year-old girl lifted her head. Roderick urged the horse forward. His wolves came with him. Behind them, from the tree line, more came, and more, and more. The sun crested the ridge, the first arrow flew, and from the highest window of the North Tower, where a woman in white stood watching the valley fill with wolves, Brissetta saw, across half a mile of open air, a face she had seen every week of her childhood in a painted icon on the wall of the founding hospice, a face she had kissed with the reverence of a child kissing a saint, the face of the great lady who had chosen her silver ring. The regent Iseult looked down from her tower, and she smiled. The first arrow struck the earth 10 paces in front of Roderick's horse. It was a warning, not a kill shot, and Roderick read it the way a reader reads a familiar word. He did not slow, he did not flinch. He only lifted one hand and the wolves behind him spread into a wide arc across the field, and he turned his head a fraction and spoke into the wind so only Brissetta would hear. She wants parley. She will offer terms. Do not answer her. Let me answer. All right. If anything she says reaches your heart, you will know it. Hold on to the record. The record will tell you what is true. All right? The gates of Hollowspire did not open. A single small postern in the main gate did. 6 figures walked out of it, unarmed, or appearing to be, and one of them carried a white flag on a short pole, and one of them was the regent herself, Lady Iseult of Hollowspire, walking across her own killing field with her chin lifted and her gray eyes shining and her silver hair loose down her back in the old style of the first queens of the realm. Brissetta felt her stomach turn over. The regent walked with the posture of a woman who had been walking into thrones her entire life. She wore white. She always wore white. Brissetta remembered suddenly, a child's memory rising up unbidden. The lady comes to the hospice in white. And the lady is so kind. The lady wears white because she is pure of heart. Brissetta had believed it. Every orphan in Low Brenner had believed it. Roderick halted the column 20 paces from her. He did not dismount. Iseult, he said. Roderick. She smiled at him. It was a warm, sad, motherly smile, the smile Brissetta had seen 100 times on the lady's icon face, and Brissetta felt a piece of her own childhood tear itself open against that smile. You should not have come back. This is my keep. This was never your keep, my love. It was mine. I let you sit in it because I loved you. I taught you how to rule because I loved you. I chose your advisors. I wrote your treaties. I arranged your borders. And I did all of it so that you would be a good king and a happy man and never, never have to know what the throne really costs. And then the keeper's whelp crawled out of a hospice in Lobrenar, and you lost your mind. She tilted her head. The motherly smile held. I had to act, Roderick. I had to protect the realm. I will step down when you are yourself again. I give you my word. You killed my parents. The smile did not move. I loved your parents. I grieved them the longest of anyone. I raised you as my own because I grieved them. You have read a forged letter, Roderick. A forged letter from a bitter old handmaiden who hated me for reasons I would not distress you with. You killed Veracor on the Pilgrim Road 6 hours ago. For the first time, the smile flickered. That is a lie. I carried her body off the road myself. That is a lie. Veracor has been dead for 20 years. She died in the south of fever. I attended her funeral. You attended an empty casket. She has been in the south protecting her niece. Her niece, Isolde. The child you have been paying to feed and clothe at Lo Brenar for 31 years, because you thought you were keeping your own conscience clean. The child is sitting on this horse in front of me. Look at her. Look at her face. Look at her mother's face. And Isolde, for the first time, looked. She looked at Briseida the way a person looks at a sentence they had considered closed. Her gray eyes moved across Briseida's features slowly, carefully, the way a jeweler examines a stone, and Briseida saw the exact moment the regent recognized her mother in her face. The moment was very small. It was only a small, quick drawing in of breath. But after that moment the motherly smile was gone, and what remained in its place was a stillness that had no warmth in it at all. Well, Esau said softly, well, that is inconvenient. Come down from your tower, Esau, Roderick said. Lay down your guard. Release my household. Walk out of this gate and kneel, and you will have a keeper's judgment, which is more mercy than you gave my mother. Oh, child, Esau laughed. The laugh was almost gentle. You know I cannot. I know you will not. There is a difference. Then you know what happens next. The regent turned her gaze back to Briseida. Her voice changed. It went softer. It went, horribly, kinder. Sable. That is your true name. Sable of Eldermere. Do you remember me, little one? Do you remember the woman in white who came every spring to the hospice, who put a silver ring around your neck when you were 6 years old, who told you that you were loved, that you were precious, that you had a place in the world? Do you remember me, Sable? Briseida's throat closed. Do not listen to her, Roderick said quietly. But Briseida was already listening. She could not help it. The regent's voice was reaching into a room in her head that had been locked since she was 6 years old. And the room was opening, and inside the room was a small girl in a too large dress, kneeling to receive a silver ring from the hands of a lady in white. And the small girl was smiling because the lady in white had told her she was loved. Sable, Esau said, the man behind you is lying to you. Do not answer her, Roderick said. He is not lying about everything. He is only lying about the part that matters. It is true that I removed his parents. It is true that I have ruled his realm in his name. It is true that I have kept you from him. All of this is true, child. But I did not do any of it out of hunger. I did it because I saw what he will become. I have raised him from a boy. I know him, Sable. I know his weaknesses. He cannot rule this realm without me. He cannot. The moment I step down, the old houses will eat him alive. He will be dead within a year, and the realm will fall into the sea. And you, and whatever child you bear him, will die with him. I did not keep you from him to hurt you. I kept you from him to save him. If you come to me now, if you lay down the record and walk through that gate with me, I will spare every servant on those scaffolds. I will spare him. I will raise your child at my own knee as I raised him. No one will die today, Sable. Not one. Only come. She held out her hand. Briseida felt the record against her ribs begin to shake. It was not a pulse. It was not a warmth. It was a shake. a small hard shake, like a small hard fist pounding against her heart from the inside. And the shake was saying one word over and over and over, and the word was a keeper's word, a word Briseida had never been taught but somehow knew, and the word was false. Her hand did not lift. "No," Briseida said. "Ha, child. No. Sable, listen to me. You do not know what he is. You do not know what wearing the record will do to you. You are a cleaning girl from a hospice. You have never governed anything. You will break under the weight of it. I am offering to carry it for you. I am offering to let you have a soft life at his side, a warm bed, a child in your arms, a hearth, while I carry the things you cannot carry. I have carried them for his sake for 27 years. Let me carry them for yours." "You carried nothing." Brissetta's voice was quiet, but it did not shake. "You took. There is a difference. My aunt told me, on the Pilgrim Road, the difference. My mother knew the difference. You burned a town so no one would remember its name, and then you wore the name of the town as your own, and then you gave me a ring and told me I was loved. You are not a mother, Lady Isol. You are a woman who has been hungry her whole life and who taught herself to call the hunger love. I am not coming through that gate." Isol's face changed. The softness peeled off it like bark off a dead tree. What remained underneath was a face Briseida had never seen before on any painted icon, a face of such old cold fury that even the horse beneath her shifted and blew. "Very well," the regent said. She raised her hand. On the walls 100 bows bent. Roderick moved faster than any of them. His horn was at his lips before Briseida saw him lift it, and the note he blew was not the calling note of the dawn. It was a killing note. 3 long and 1 short. And at the far end of the field, the great main gate of Hollowspire shuddered and groaned, because on the inside of it, 6 of Roderick's wolves who had slipped in the night before were throwing their shoulders against the bar, and the bar gave, and the gate swung inward, and behind it, in the forecourt, the old loyal guard who had been pretending for 3 weeks to serve the regent dropped their regent's cloaks in the mud and drew their true blades. The field erupted. Roderick wheeled his horse. He pressed Briseida down against his chest with one hand and drew a short blade with the other, and shouted something to his captain that Briseida could not hear over the rising roar. And then they were moving, a black spear driving toward the gate, and around them the wolves of the old blood came out of the trees in a dark tide, and the air was suddenly full of arrows, and one struck the side of Roderick's horse, and the horse screamed and stumbled, and Briseida felt the great body begin to go down. Roderick swung her off the saddle before they hit the ground. She landed on her feet in the mud because he had set her there, and the horse crashed beside her, and Roderick was still mounted for one breath, and then not mounted. And then he was between her and the wall, his blade up, his body a shield, and an arrow took him through the meat of his thigh, and he did not fall. "Run for the gate," he snarled. No. Briseida." I said no." 2 of the regent's guard broke from the wall and came for them. Roderick killed the first before Briseida had time to scream. The second nearly reached her, and would have, except that the gray-haired captain, the woman who had laced her boots, came out of the smoke at full run and put her sword through him, and then took a blade between her own ribs from a third man Briseida had not seen, and went down without a sound. Briseida fell to her knees beside her. "Stay up," the captain gasped. "Stay up, lady. Do not kneel on this field. Stand up." "I can heal you. The record. Maybe I can." "No." The woman's hand caught her wrist. The hand was weak already. "The record is not for me. The record is for her. For the one in the tower. Stand up, lady. Look at the tower." Briseida looked up. At the highest window of the north tower, the regent Isol was no longer smiling. She was watching. And in her hand, even from this distance, Brissida could see a long, thin blade, silvered along its edge, the kind of blade that had been forged, in the oldest songs, for only one purpose: a keeper's blade, a blade that could kill the record, a blade that could kill her. The regent turned from the window and disappeared into the tower. Roderick was beside Briseida again, his hand on her arm, his leg bleeding black through his leathers. She is coming down. She will try to reach you before my wolves can clear the keep. I have to hold the court. You cannot stay with me. I need you to go up. Up. To the old chapel on the third level of the North Tower. The record knows the way. It will show you. Go now, Briseida. Go. I will come for you the moment I can. Run. He kissed her. Once. Hard. On the mouth. He did not ask. She did not stop him. She tasted blood and smoke, and the end of 31 years. Then he shoved her toward the gate, and the wolves closed around her like a moving wall, and she was inside Hollow Spire Keep, and she was running up the stone stair she had climbed only the day before, and the record against her ribs was blazing, and she knew, with the sick, cold clarity of a prey animal, that she was running straight toward the woman who had already killed half her family. She reached the third level of the North Tower. The old chapel door was ajar. She pushed it open. The chapel was lit by a single candle. The candle stood on a stone altar at the far end. And sitting on the altar, very calm, very patient, her gray eyes bright, and her long silvered blade resting across her lap, was the Regent Isol. "Hello, Sable," she said. "Come in, child. Close the door behind you." Briseida closed the door. Not because the regent told her to. Because she understood all at once that whatever was about to happen in this chapel was the thing the record had been written for, across 31 years, by a lonely boy who had grown into a lonely king. It was for her. The question was hers. And the answer the record had been waiting its whole life to give could only be given with a closed door. The regent rose from the altar. The blade came up. Briseida opened the record in her hands, and the pages began to burn with silver light, and her skin began to change beneath her dress. And the first low sound that came out of her throat was not a human sound at all. The regent Iso had been practicing the motion of this blade for 27 years. She did not raise it with the hurry of a hunter. She raised it the way a priestess raises a ceremonial thing, with both hands, with her chin lifted, with an expression on her face that Briseida would remember for the rest of her life as the moment she stopped being afraid of her. Because the expression was not wrath. It was not hatred. It was the small, patient, almost tender expression of a woman who had been waiting for a very long time to finish a piece of work she had begun before Briseida had been born. It was the face of a woman who still, even now, believed herself kind. Briseida did not move toward her. She did not step back. She only stood in the closed chapel with the record open in her hands, and the silver light rising out of the pages like breath rising from a sleeper's mouth in cold air, and she looked at the woman who had killed her mother and her mother's family and her mother's town. The woman who had put a ring on her neck when she was 6 years old and told her she was loved. The woman who was about to try very hard to cut her throat. And she felt for the first time since she had walked into a library that remembered her, completely still. "Put the book down, Sable," the regent said gently. "It will be easier for both of us." "No. You do not understand what you are holding, child. The record was not made to be held by a living keeper. It was made to be guarded by one. There is a difference. No girl your age has ever opened it awake. It will unmake you before it finishes answering you. Let me take it from you. Let me finish what I started. I will not hurt the king. I swear it on my own life. I only need the book." "You have never sworn anything on your own life that you did not break by morning." The regent smiled sadly. "That is your aunt speaking, not you." "It is me speaking, Isol. You do not know me. You have never known me. You have only known the shape of the child you were afraid of, and I am not that child anymore. The regent's face tightened. She struck. She was faster than Briseida had expected a woman of her age to be. The blade moved in a single clean silver arc, aimed at the hand that held the record, because she did not want to kill Briseida yet, only to sever the book from her, to let it fall, to let the bond go quiet. It was a master's strike. It should have taken Briseida's hand off at the wrist. It did not. Because the record had been listening for a long time, and the record had decided, some while ago, that it did not wish to be severed from its keeper today. The silver light around Briseida rose. It did not defend her the way a shield defends. It answered the blade the way an older song answers a newer one, with the calm certainty of a melody that knows itself to be the elder. The keeper's blade struck the light and did not cut it. It slowed. It slowed the way a stone slows in deep water. Isol's arm jerked as she felt the drag, her eyes widening, and in the space of that single surprised breath, Briseida stepped inside the arc of the strike and set the palm of her free hand flat against the regent's chest. She did not know she was going to do it. The record did. Silver light went through her palm and into Isol's breastbone, and the regent made a small, strange sound that was almost a laugh and almost a sob, and her silvered blade fell ringing to the chapel floor, and she sank to her knees in front of the altar, as if her legs had forgotten their purpose. And Briseida knelt with her because her own legs were doing something new as well. Her bones were remembering a shape they had never worn, and the two of them went down together in the candlelight with the record burning between them and Briseida's hand still pressed over the regent's heart. "What are you doing?" Isole whispered. "I do not know yet." "You are reading me." "I think so." "Yes." "Stop. Sable, stop. You are not old enough to read me. You will see things you cannot unsee." "I have already seen everything I cannot unsee, Isolde. I saw it on a pilgrim road 6 hours ago." The regent's eyes filled. It was the first honest thing Briseida had ever seen cross her face. Not pain, not fear. Shame. A deep, old, weary shame that had been sealed under the white robes for most of a lifetime. "I did love him," Isole said. "I did love Roderick. That part was never a lie. You should know that. When they tell the story of me, after today, you should know that I loved him like my own son, and it is not his fault that loving him was not enough to make me a good woman. I know. Do you? I know." Briseida closed her eyes. Under her palm, the regent's heart was beating very fast. A thin old heart. A heart that had been driving a body that had not slept properly in 27 years. And through her palm, the record was flowing into that heart. Not to kill it, Briseida understood, but to read it, to record it, to take down at last the full and true account of everything the regent had done, and everything the regent had told herself about what she had done, so that, when Briseida stood up from this floor, the realm would know. Every town, every house, every orphan. The regent could not run from any of it anymore. The record would write her. That was the keeper's oldest work, and Briseida understood, kneeling there, that she had been born to do it. "This will not kill you," she said quietly, to the woman under her hand. "I do not have the right to kill you, and I do not want it. You will live, Isole. You will live a long time, and every morning, for the rest of your life, you will wake up knowing that the realm knows exactly who you were. You will wake up in a cell, and you will wake up in the truth, and you will not be able to tell yourself the story of the good woman in white anymore. That is your judgment. That is a keeper's judgment. Take it." The regent bowed her head. She was weeping by then, silently, her shoulders shaking under her white robes. "Take it, Sable," she whispered. Briseida took it. The silver light flared one final time, so bright that the chapel walls glowed like lanterns, and then it drew back into the record, and into Briseida's skin, and into the silver ring at her throat, and it was done. The regent slumped sideways against the altar. She was alive. She was breathing. She was only, for the first time in 27 years, no longer hiding from what she had done. The chapel door burst open. Roderick was through it before the second of his wolves had cleared the threshold, and when he saw her on her knees in the candlelight, with the record still open in her lap, and the regent fallen and weeping on the altar stone, he did not speak. He crossed the chapel in 3 long, uneven strides, his wounded leg dragging, and he sank to his knees in front of her and took her face in both his hands and pressed his forehead against hers, and his breath was shaking, and his eyes were shut, and he did not speak for a long time because he did not trust himself to. "You are alive," he said at last. "Yes. You did it without me. I did it with you. You just were not in the room." He laughed. It was a broken, small, disbelieving laugh, and he pressed his mouth to her brow, and he kept it there, and she let him. "The keep," she said after a moment. "The scaffolds. Asenka. Held. All of them. The gibbets never went up. The old houses came in behind my wolves the moment the gate fell. Isolde's guard laid down arms when her banner came off the north tower. No one hanged this morning, Brisetta. Not one. The girl, Asenka, she is only 14. She is with the captain. The captain lived. The blade missed her heart by a finger's width. She is already giving orders from a cot in the south court as if she had never been cut at all." Brisetta let out a breath that seemed to come from the bottom of a very deep well. "Good," she said. "Yes. Roderick. Yes. Take me out of this chapel. I do not want to be in this room anymore. I want the sky." He lifted her. He was limping. He lifted her anyway, one arm under her knees, the other around her back, the record tucked against her chest between them, and he carried her out of the chapel and down the stone stair and through the long corridors of the keep that Brisetta had only the day before been climbing with a bucket in her hand. His wolves moved around them like a tide parting. Servants she did not know stepped aside with their hands pressed to their hearts, and some of them were weeping, and some of them were only looking at her with a long, still wonder, as if they were seeing a story they had been told in childhood walk past them in the flesh. The old council, Brisetta learned later, had come spilling out of the throne room the moment the gate fell, and had seen the shape of the record in the hands of the young woman being carried through their corridors, and had done the only thing that old men of the old blood knew to do when they saw a keeper walk, which was to stand very quietly against the walls and bow their heads. Roderick did not take her to the throne room. He took her out. He carried her through a small door off the west gallery that Brisetta had not known existed, and down a flight of steps, and into a walled garden that had not been tended in many years, a garden full of white flowers gone wild and stone benches gone mossy, and a small round pool at its center that still held a little winter water. He set her down on one of the stone benches. He did not let go of her hand. "Your mother's garden," he said. "She planted it the year she was named keeper. She was 15. Isolde had it sealed behind a false wall after the burning of Eldermere. I had it opened again 3 weeks ago, in case. In case. In case you ever sat in it." Brisetta looked around her. The garden was small and broken and full of weeds, and the white flowers were blooming anyway, out of season, the way white flowers bloomed in the first entry of the record, and she understood, with a quietness that was almost unbearable, that she had come home. She put her face in her hands, and finally, she cried. She cried for the woman on the pilgrim road who had been her aunt for one night. She cried for the woman in the snow who had been her mother for a season of a womb. She cried for Mother Velk, who had lied to her every day and loved her every day, and had died still lying, and had been right to. She cried for the small girl in the too large dress at the founding hospice, who had knelt to receive a silver ring from a woman in white, and had believed, for 25 years afterwards, that she had been chosen out of love. She cried for Eldermere. She cried for the town's old name. She cried for the 30 scaffolds that had not gone up, and for Asenka, and for the gray-haired captain, and for the boy of 9 who had been told that his mother had died in a hunting accident. She cried for Roderick. She cried for the 31 years of his writing. She cried until she could not breathe, and then she cried more. And Roderick did not try to stop her. He only sat beside her with his wounded leg stretched out on the moss and his hand, dry and warm and steady, folded around hers, and he let her weep out the first grief of her life. The grief that had been waiting in her ribs since she was 2 days old, the grief of having been a child who did not know what had been taken from her. When she was done, he did not make her speak. He only turned her hand over in his and traced, very gently, the line of her palm with his thumb. "I have a confession," he said quietly. She laughed a wet, small laugh. "Another one." "Yes, another one. I hope it will be the last for a while." "Go on." "When I set that posting at the notice board in Low Brennar 3 weeks ago, I wrote the wages myself. I wrote 3 silver a week because I knew you would take 3 silver. I knew, because I have been reading a small book for 3 years, that one of my wolves in the lower town has been keeping for me, about everything you did every day. I knew what rent you paid. I knew what bread you bought. I knew what the plant on your window meant to you, because I knew it was the last thing your mother gave you. I knew you would walk half a league in worn boots before you would ask anyone for help. I set 3 silver because 3 silver was exactly enough to make you come. Roderick, I am not asking you to forgive it. I am telling you because I promised I would stop hiding from you, and that is the last thing I was still hiding." She looked at him. His stormwater eyes were steady. They were also afraid. It was a small, honest fear, the fear of a man who had just handed a woman the final thing she could use against him, and was waiting, quietly, to see if she would. She lifted his hand and she pressed her lips to the back of his knuckles, and she held it there for a long time. "Thank you for telling me," she said. "You are not angry." "I am very tired, Roderick. I will be angry later, perhaps, for an hour. And then I will not be angry anymore. Because you are right. 3 silver was exactly enough to make me come. And I came. And I would have stayed in that lower town for the rest of my life, if you had not set that posting, and I would have died without ever knowing my own name. So, 3 silver was the price of my life, and you paid it, and I will not be angry about the price of my life." He pressed his forehead to hers again. She felt him breathing out slowly. "Marry me," he said. She blinked. "Now. Not now. When you have rested. When the keep has rested. When Eldermere is on the maps again, and Asenka is on her feet, and Iseult is in her cell, and the garden has been tended, and you have had 1 full season to decide that you want me, not because the record said so, but because you do." "Roderick." "Yes." "That is a very long sentence to propose in." "I have been writing it for 31 years. I have had time to polish it." She laughed. It was the first real laugh of her life, she thought, and it startled something in her that she had not known was still capable of starting, and Roderick smiled, and she leaned her head against his shoulder, and the white flowers in her mother's garden moved a little in the morning air, and for the first time in her life, Brisetta Corr was not afraid of what tomorrow would cost her. They were married in the spring. They did not hurry it. Roderick kept the promise he had made in the garden. He gave her a full season before he asked again. In that season, many things happened. The old houses of the reach of Morofell came one by one to the keep to kneel to the keeper, and Brisetta received each of them in a plain, dark dress with the record open on a table beside her, because she wanted them to understand, from the first day, that the book was why they were there, and not any woman in any particular gown. The regent Isol was tried before a council of 7 keepers drawn from the southern holdings, and the trial was public, and the record was read aloud over 3 days, and the woman in white did not defend herself, and at the end she was sentenced to live out the rest of her life in a small stone room in the oldest part of the keep, with 1 window and a cot, and a fresh copy of the full record placed on a shelf that she would be made to read aloud every morning for 1 hour to a silent keeper for every remaining year of her life. It was a judgment the realm had not seen in 400 years. It was a judgment Briseda had found in a commentary in the back of the record, written in her grandmother's hand. She had copied it exactly. The town of Isol's Ford was given back its old name. Brisetta rode down into Eldermere herself the day the new signs were set at the gates, and she walked through streets her mother had run as a child, and a baker Brisetta had never met came out of his shop and pressed a small white loaf into her hands and wept without speaking, because his grandmother had served in the house that had been burned, and he had been told the story of the burning every year of his life, and he had been waiting his whole life to give a loaf of bread to the girl who had come home. Asenka, the 14-year-old girl who had been set to watch Brisida at the Thistle Inn, was taken into Briseda's own service, not as a maid, but as a ward. She was too young to have her childhood taken from her any earlier than it already had been. Roderick did not argue. Asenka slept in a small bright room next to Briseda's own, and learned her letters properly for the first time, and, Briseda suspected, would one day be the first keeper of the new line. The gray-haired captain, whose name turned out to be Marenka, recovered slowly and badly, and never quite moved her left arm right again, and insisted on lacing Briseda's boots for her every morning of the first season, because she said it was what she had earned the right to do. The book that had been called The Record, the book that had known Briseda's name for 31 years, the book that had written itself every night for as long as Roderick had been old enough to dream, was laid on a stone shelf in the private library of the keep on the morning of Briseda's wedding. Its pages, for the first time in its long life, were blank. Roderick, seeing it, frowned for a moment in a way Briseda did not understand. "It is empty," he said. "Yes. Is that ordinary?" "It is, actually. The commentary in the back said it would be." She ran her fingers along the silver thread on the cover, which no longer spelled her name, which had returned to the moving letters she had not been able to read on the first day. "The record writes until the named mate is named. Until she is home. Until she has claimed her life. After that, the book sleeps. Sometimes for 1 generation. Sometimes for 10. The next time it wakes, it will wake for someone else. Someone we will not live to meet. That is a strange grief. It is a good grief. It is the grief of a story that does not need us anymore." They were married in her mother's garden, which had been tended for 4 months by a small, quiet gardener whom Roderick had personally paid too much money, and the white flowers were in bloom properly for the first time in 27 years. She wore a dress of pale wool with a silver ring at her throat, the same ring that had been on her neck since she was 6 years old, and Roderick wore the simplest black he could find in his wardrobe, because she had asked him not to wear a crown. The crown, she had told him, would only get in the way of the kissing. He had agreed. Their daughter was born in the first cold month of the next winter. They named her Vera. 2 years later, a son came. They named him Aldemar, after Roderick's father, and he had stormwater eyes and a laugh that made the keep's old stones feel younger than they had in centuries. The children grew up knowing exactly who their mother was. They grew up knowing where they came from. They grew up with the full story written out in a small, clean history Briseda herself kept on a shelf by their schoolroom, a history that did not soften any of it, because Briseda had decided very early that her children would not grow up on kind lies the way she had. They learned the names of Mother Velk, and Vera, and Marenka, and Asenka, and the gray-haired captain and the baker in Eldermere, and they learned the names of the 30 servants who had not been hanged, and they learned also the name of the woman in white, because Briseda believed that a child who did not know what had been almost done to their family could not properly appreciate the peace they lived in. They visited Eldermere once a year. They never visited the cell at the oldest part of the keep. Their mother visited it for them, once a week, for many years, and sat on a small stool in the corner of the stone room and listened to an old woman in plain gray read aloud, in a voice that got thinner every year, from a book that was the story of her life. And Briseda never once in all those years said anything to the woman on the cot. That was not her work. Her work was only to listen. Keepers listened. That was, in the end, what a keeper was. The regent Isou lived 11 more years. The morning she died, Briseda was the only person in the room. She stood for a long time at the side of the cot, and then she went to the window, and she opened it, and she let the air of the keep in, and she said nothing for a while, and then she said, quietly, to the body on the cot, "I hope you rest now." That was all. On a bright morning in the 12th year of her marriage, Briseda climbed the North Tower alone. She did not often do so. The tower had bad memories for her. But on that morning she felt the slow, warm pull of an old thing waking under her ribs, the way the record had once pulled at her on the Pilgrim Road, and she knew, the way a keeper knew, that she was being called. She climbed the winding stair past the 4th landing, and the mirror, that had once, on her first day in the keep, looked at her as if it knew her. She paused at the mirror this time. She looked into it. The woman in the glass looked back. The woman in the glass had silver threads at her temples now, and small lines at the corners of her eyes, and she was smiling, because the woman in the glass had finally become someone the woman outside the glass was glad to recognize. She climbed the rest of the way. The door of the study was not locked. It never was anymore. She pushed it open. The long, narrow room opened before her, lined floor to ceiling with books, the hearth low, the lamp burning the way it always burned. She crossed to the cabinet behind the black curtain, which she had restored herself 3 winters earlier, because Roderick had wanted to tear it out, and she had told him no, because not all old things needed to be torn out. Some needed to be kept, carefully, as a reminder. She drew the curtain back. The shelf was empty, as she had left it. Except it was not, quite, empty anymore. A new book had appeared on the middle shelf. A book bound in pale cloth. A book she had not put there. A book whose cover bore no title and no thread, but only a small round space where a title would one day be, Waiting. Briseda stood for a long time in the blue light of the cabinet. She did not take the book down. It was not for her to take. It was for whoever it was for, in whatever generation the record decided to wake next, for whatever lonely child of the reach of Morofell would one day be old enough to dream a face they had not yet met. She only laid her hand, very gently, on the pale cover. "I hope they come home sooner than I did," she said. Then she closed the curtain and she went down the tower, and she walked back into the bright garden where her husband was sitting on a stone bench with their son on his shoulders, and their daughter trying to braid a white flower into his hair, and he looked up at her as she came down the path. And his face was the face of a man who had spent 31 years learning how to wait, and who had spent every year since learning how not to have to anymore. He held out his hand. She took it. She sat down beside him in her mother's garden, in her own life, and the white flowers moved in the afternoon air, and their daughter said, "Mama, you are late." And Brisetta laughed, because it was the first sentence of the first dream, spoken at last by the right voice, and she bent and kissed the small, serious face of her daughter, and she answered, exactly as her own heart had once answered, without knowing that it knew. "I am sorry, my love," she said. I came as fast as I could. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this story stayed with you.